Welcome everybody. Today we're going to take a look at the index match function. So we're going to take two functions, index and match. We're going to combine those two together to make what I feel is the ultimate lookup function within Excel. If you remember last time we discussed Vlookup, it had limitations to it. It could only go left to right and basically top to bottom. Well, index match, when combined to make a lookup function, does not have those limitations. It's practically limitless. It doesn't have any limitations really. So it's way more versatile, way more powerful than the VLOOKUP function. Not to say VLOOKUP function isn't good, because it is. However, index match, like I said, is way more powerful. So today we're going to take a look at mastering that function, okay, as a combination. So let's start off by taking a look at the functions separately to get an understanding of what they do, and then we'll go through and combine them to make the actual lookup function, and then we'll do several examples together to ensure you all become index match experts. So let's go ahead and get started with that. Okay, let's take a look at index by itself. So index essentially returns a cell's contents based on a selected series of cells, typically a column or columns, and a specified row number. Okay, so if we take a look at the syntax itself, you have index, array, row number, and then in brackets you have column number. And what those brackets indicate is that column number is an optional argument and does not have to be filled in to the syntax to get an output to occur. Okay, so let's break down the syntax a little so you guys have a real good understanding of what the syntax is calling for. An array is a series of cells, usually a single column, but could be multiple columns using this function. The row number basically is how far down do you want the function to count to know when it is in the cell you want to ultimately return an output in your new data set, or where you're going to output in your function. And column number in brackets, again, the brackets represent that it's an optional argument. So if multiple columns were selected during the array portion of the syntax, you can specify which column number you want to go over to in that row that you specified, and then those cell contents will ultimately be returned. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. Okay, we're going to use the index function and we're going to get an output. Okay, we're going to type index, start typing index, we'll hit tab, let it finish it for us, and then for array we're going to select the header included with our column data. We're going to go ahead and do that. And then we're going to say return column or row number 6. Okay, and we're going to hit enter and we get 105. So let's take a quick look at why we got 105 there. So when you select the header, whichever you select first becomes number 1. And then as it's counting down, it's going 2, then row 3, then row 4, then row 5, then row 6. And that ultimately returns the 105. Okay, so what if we want to use column number? Okay, we'll do that right here. So let's start typing index again. Hit tab. And this time we're going to select the header still, and we're going to grab both of our columns. We're going to get both of them. And then we're still going to output 6, but this time we are going to go for the first name, which is actually column number, you guessed it probably, 2. So we're going to put a 2 here. And then we ultimately get Natasha. Because again, just like in VLOOKUP when you're counting columns, the very first column is 1 and then 2. And then if we had another one over here, it would be 3. Okay, so that's the first example with the header selected. Okay, so let's clean this stuff up a little bit here. Hopefully you all got that. And then let's take a look at the second example in which we're not gonna select the header this time. Okay, let's do it again, not select the header, so you can see the difference. Okay, so we're not gonna select the header, we're gonna go down, we're gonna select our column, then we're gonna say row number 6 again, so you can see the difference. We're gonna close that off, we're not using column number on this one, and then we get 110. And so why is that? That is because now instead of ID number, our header being 1, this one's our 1. And then we go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, some of you are probably ahead of me and know what we're getting ready to output next. However, let's do it together. Index, okay, and we're going to select both of our columns without the header. And we're going to still go 6 again, just so we can see the difference. And then we're going to say, let's return column 2 because we want the first name. Now let's see what that first name outputs to be. All right, as some of you probably already knew, it was going to be Peter, okay? Because again, ID number is still 1 and first name is still 2. Okay, so that's a quick look at the index function. And just as a quick tip, whenever you're selecting your arrays, whenever you're selecting your columns, Control Shift plus the down arrow will select all of the cells for you in that range. So if I were to click here and go Control Shift down arrow, it selects everything I want. And you can do that same thing with Control Shift over arrow to the right, over to the left, or up. So anytime you want to select data really quick, that's the quickest way to do it. Just want to throw that tip out there for you all. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the match function so you guys have a really good understanding of what that one does. All right, let's do that now. All right, let's take a quick look at match and what it does. So match returns a row number based on the location of a lookup value within a specified lookup array. So ultimately, the match function is going to output a number corresponding to a row number. Now, the syntax for match is equals match, then lookup value, comma, lookup array, comma, match type. So let's take a look at what those are. And basically, your lookup value is what you want to find in the lookup array. In your lookup array, you're going to select the column where the lookup value can be found. Now, match type, it can be a -1, a 0, or a +1. However, selecting the 1 or the -1 can get quite complex and confusing. So when you're using Index+Match as a lookup function, I always make it 0, so I get an exact match on my lookup value. So my advice would be, when using this combination of functions as a lookup function, make it a 0 all the time. Okay, so let's take a look at 2 quick examples. One, we're going to select the header first, and then the other one, we're not going to select the header. So let's see what we get for an output. We're going to go match, open parentheses. Our lookup value is right here, 245. And so for lookup array, we're going to say, where can I find that 245? And it's right in this column here. Okay, and I did Control Shift down arrow for that one. And again, we're going to do 0 for exact match. And let's see what our output is. So we get an 8. Okay, and again, let's count it out. Let's make sure that that's correct. So we selected our header, so we know that's number 1. And then we go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Row number 8 has 245 in it. So our output is correct. And we selected the header, so that became number 1. Okay, so let's take a look at number 2. We'll clean this up and then we'll take a look at and do example 2. So we're going to not select the header this time. Okay, we're gonna go equals match. We'll go ahead and hit tab, let it finish it for us. And our lookup value, we're gonna keep it 245 just so you can see the difference in selecting header versus not selecting the header. And where can 245 be found? It can be found right here in this column. We just don't know where it is as far as its row number. And then we're gonna make this a 0 because we're always gonna make that a 0, right, team? We're always gonna make it a 0. And so we get a 7, which is what we expected because we did not select our header. So 145 became 1. And then we just count our rows down till we get to 245, which is what Excel is doing, which is what the match function is doing. Okay, and so you can play with this. You can change this to 145 and see what you get. You get a 2 because in this one we selected the header. So you can change these. You can play around with this and get different outputs. Okay, all right, kind of useful. So, but the real thing that we want to do is combine these two functions for the ultimate lookup function, which is what we're going to do in just a moment. We're going to take a quick look at the index match syntax when it's combined. That way you all have a really good understanding once we do our examples. It'll make a lot more sense. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Index match. So basically what we're doing is we're combining two functions to form the most powerful lookup function in Excel, in my humble opinion, when you're comparing it to things like Lookup or Vlookup or just plain old lookup. And I'm a pretty humble guy, so I'd like to say my opinions are typically right if you ask me. So let's take a look at the syntax real quick for index match. So what we have is equals index and then array and then match, open parentheses, lookup value, comma, lookup array, comma, match type, and then two parentheses at the end to close it out. You always have to have equal number of parentheses that open versus ones that close. Otherwise you will get an error. So basically, you have index and then array, and then the rest of the function is actually just the match function, which we've gone over. So the array is the column in a master data set that has what I ultimately would like to output from the function. Okay, so when you get to this portion of the syntax, you'll go to your big data set and you'll select the column that has what you want to output ultimately. And then from there, it's really just the match function that we're using. So again, our lookup value is in our new data set, but we will search for it in the master data set or the big data set that we have. And it will ultimately output a row number based on where it's found in the lookup array, if you remember, what we did for match. And the lookup array, of course, is the column where the lookup value can be found, and that's in the master data set as well. And then match type, for now, let's please always make this a 0. It'll make our lives a lot easier, and we're more likely to get a good output from our function. So that's the index match syntax combined, okay? So I kind of committed it to memory to help me understand it better. I just committed it to memory and just would say these same things to myself every single time I did the function. So now to really nail this down, hit a home run on it, we're going to do about 10 examples of index match. So I hope you're still stuck with me. And now we're going to get down to the nitty gritty, and you're going to see this function in action. It's pretty powerful. So let's go ahead and do that now. We're going to jump right in and we're going to start doing examples. So if we remember our syntax for index match, we're going to put that right here because this is what we want to output. So we're going to take a lookup value of a first name, which you can see over here in our master data set. This is considered our master data set. We're going to say, based off the first name, I want to know the IP address. Okay, so we're going to go index. And then our array is what do we ultimately want to output? And in this case, we say IP address is what we want to ultimately output. So over, you can select the header on this one, it's fine. And I'll do Control Shift down arrow. And then we'll scroll back up so you can see what's going on. And then that's what we ultimately want to output is IP address. And then we're going to go comma and then match. And the rest of it is our match function from here on out. And so our lookup value is going to be our first name. So we're going to select that. And then we're going to say, well, where can I find first name? We come over to our master data set. Okay, we'll select the whole column that has first names in it because that's where our first name will be found. We'll scroll back up so you can see what's going on. And then comma, we're always going to make this 0. And then we're going to do our double parentheses to close it off. And what happened? We have an NA. That is because we have not yet selected our lookup value. Okay, so just be on the lookout for that. I wanted to show you all that. So let's go ahead and select Ferdinand. And as you can see, we get the correct IP address. Okay, so let's do that one more time. Let's do it again. Index, we want IP address, so we're going to select that, comma, match, open parentheses. We'll select where our lookup value is, which is going to be here. Where can we find first name? We can find it right here in this column. Okay, and then we're going to go comma 0. Always make it 0. Double parentheses to close it off. And then we'll come back up here, and then we'll select a different first name this time. Okay, let's go with Marshall. Excellent. So Marshall. 59 132 169 152. So that works out just fine. Okay, one more time, just to really make sure we have this down. Index, we want IP address, comma, match. Then we're going to select our lookup value, and this is considered our new data set, so it's going to be right here. Where can we find first name? Right here. Comma 0, double parentheses, closed. Okay, select the first name, Morty. All right, I'm kind of a fanatic about everything being in the middle, so we're going to put everything in the middle. I'll do that so I don't have to keep doing that. So let's go down to Morty, make sure we have the right one, and we do. Okay, so for our next example, set of examples, we are going to use the last name to determine the gender. Okay, so we'll go index. What do I ultimately want to output? I ultimately want to output the gender. So I'm going to select that. Okay, and then we'll come back up and then we'll say, okay, now I'm at the point where I need to use the match function. So our lookup value is going to be the last name. Well, where can I find the last name? Well, I can find the last name right here. So we're going to select all of that. And then, of course, we go comma 0, double parentheses to close it off. And now let's select the last name. Okay, let's make sure that that is correct. Male, that is correct. Okay, so if you're in a situation like this and you have to do this over and over again, what you can do is, like in your Vlookup, you can highlight your references and make them static references, okay? And you'll do that for your lookup array and your array that you ultimately want to output, so that when you drag this formula down, it doesn't change those references. And then you can just go through and select the last names that you want. Okay, let's make sure that that's right. That is correct. And then if we select Winterborn, we should see male pop in there. And we do. So that's correct as well. Okay, so let's do another set and we will use our static references again. This time we're going to use the ID to ultimately find the email address. So we're going to equals index I ultimately want to output the email address. So I'm going to select all of this with a Control Shift and a down arrow. And we're going to go comma match. And our lookup value is right here. Where can I find ID? Well, I can find ID right here. Okay, so we're going to grab that. And this would be so much quicker and easier if this were set up as a table, which we'll get into that. And then we're going to go 0 and then double parentheses. And let's select the lookup value. Let's select 5 and see if we get Morty's email address. And we do. So in order to run this down and then be able to just select and not have to type the whole formula out again, we'll just highlight our array, hit F4. Then we'll highlight our lookup array, hit F4, come out of there, hit equals, and then we'll come over here and then we'll click and drag it down. And then we'll select our lookup IDs and we'll get our email addresses. So let's go with 7. Did we get Ricky's? We did. So let's select 9. All right. Everything's looking good. So you may have noticed I was using a drop down for this exercise here for these examples. So right below here, as you can see here, I have how to make a drop down. I have the instructions laid out step by step for you all. And this workbook will be linked to this video. So you all can take this whole entire workbook and play with it. You can change things. You can really explore the index match function or the index function or the match function if you so desire, and learn more about those as well. So also included in this is a handy, very, very handy dandy keyboard shortcuts right here. It's a big list of keyboard shortcuts for Excel. I figured that'd be good for you all to have and will save you a lot of time as you continue learning and growing in Excel. Okay, so those were our examples. If there's any questions about anything that I covered, please let me know in the comment section below or send me an email, okay? All right. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like and share this video. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you don't miss out on weekly content on all things Excel related. I promise if you stick with me, you will become an Excel super user in no time. Again, for all your Excel related questions, if you have them, why not ask an Excel dude? I am here for you. Thank you so much. I'll catch you in the next one.